At my daughter's wedding, I discovered her husband sold my late wife's necklace. What happened after changed everything. The church smelled faintly of lilies, just the way my wife always liked it. I stood near the front row, my hands clasped together, my tie feeling a little too tight. Emma looked beautiful, radiant in her white gown, the same way her mother had on our wedding day nearly 40 years ago. It was a moment I'd dreamt about, yet the dream felt bittersweet. Her mother, Laura, had passed away 8 years earlier, and though I tried to be strong, there were moments like this when her absence felt almost unbearable. I had always imagined placing Laura's necklace around Emma's neck on her wedding day. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a piece of our history. Laura wore it on our first anniversary, on the day Emma was born, and on countless family celebrations. It was a gold chain with a small sapphire pendant, nothing extravagant, but it carried more meaning than anything money could buy. I had kept it safely locked away, waiting for this day. But when I went to the safe 2 weeks ago, it wasn't there. At first, I thought I had misplaced it. I turned the house upside down, checked drawers I hadn't opened in years, even looked in the attic. Nothing. I didn't tell Emma, I didn't want to ruin her excitement. But I asked her fiancé, Daniel, if he had seen it. He hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. I remember thinking his reaction was strange, like he was holding back something, but I didn't press him. I told myself it was just pre-wedding stress making me paranoid. Now, as I stood in the front row watching Emma walk down the aisle, I noticed her neck was bare. No necklace. No family heirloom. My heart sank. After the ceremony, during the reception, I found a quiet moment to ask her about it. She smiled sadly. Dad? Daniel told me the necklace was lost. I didn't want to upset you before the wedding. Lost. The word echoed in my mind. Something about it didn't sit right. Later that evening, I overheard Daniel talking to one of his friends near the bar. The music was loud, but I caught fragments of his words. Sold it, helped with the business, she doesn't know everything. The room felt smaller. The music faded into the background. I walked over slowly, my chest tight. Daniel's face paled when he saw me. I didn't make a scene, Emma's happiness came first, but inside, my emotions were a storm. I thought about all the late nights Laura and I spent planning for Emma's future, the way she had said, one day, she'll have this necklace, and it'll be like I'm with her on her wedding day. And now, the one thing that was supposed to connect them had been traded for cash. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the hotel window, watching the city lights, thinking about the years of memories tied to that necklace. It wasn't just about the object, it was about trust, respect, and love. Why didn't Daniel come to me if he needed help? Why did he think it was okay to take something that didn't belong to him? By morning, I had made up my mind to speak to him privately. We met at a small cafe a few streets from the hotel. He looked nervous, fiddling with his coffee cup. Daniel, I began slowly, I know about the necklace. I heard you last night. His shoulders tensed. He tried to explain, it was an investment opportunity, something he believed would secure their financial future. He said he intended to buy it back once the business started making money. But to me, it wasn't about whether he could replace it. The original was irreplaceable. It was Laura's. It was the story behind it. And he had taken it without asking. I listened quietly, my mind wrestling between anger and the desire to protect my daughter from pain. I could see he wasn't an evil man, just impulsive, maybe desperate. But desperation wasn't an excuse for betrayal. You should have come to me, I said finally. I would have helped you. But now I don't know how to look at you the same way. He lowered his gaze. I'm sorry, he said, barely above a whisper. Sorry didn't bring back the necklace. Sorry didn't undo the loss. I left the cafe without telling him what I planned to do next. Over the following days, I started making discreet inquiries. A friend of mine, Tom, ran a small pawn shop and had connections with dealers who might have come across a sapphire pendant matching Laura's. The search began quietly, without Emma knowing. I didn't want her honeymoon overshadowed by this. Every lead was a dead end. Every phone call felt like another door closing. But then, a week later, Tom called me. I think I found it, he said. My heart raced. He described the pendant, the chain, even a tiny scratch near the clasp, a detail only someone who had held it could know. It was sitting in a shop 3 towns over. The asking price was much higher than it was worth in gold or gems, it was being sold as an antique sentimental piece. I didn't care about the price. I drove there the same day. When I saw it, I knew instantly. It was Laura's. The memories flooded back, the night I gave it to her, the way she touched it absent-mindedly when she was deep in thought, the way it caught the light when she laughed. I bought it back without hesitation. As I drove home, the necklace sat on the passenger seat, and I couldn't stop glancing at it. It felt like a small piece of Laura had come back to me. But now came the hard part, what to do about Daniel. Do I tell Emma everything? Do I give her the necklace now or wait for the right moment? Part of me wanted to protect her from the truth. Another part of me felt she deserved to know the kind of man she had married. The night before Emma and Daniel were due to return from their honeymoon, I sat at the kitchen table with the necklace in front of me. I turned it over in my hands, the cool metal pressing into my skin. I thought about Laura's words, about love and trust. I thought about the family we had built, and how fragile it could be. And I realized that whatever I chose to do next would change everything. It wouldn't just affect me, it would shape Emma's future, her marriage, and perhaps even the way she saw her mother's memory. The sound of the front door opening pulled me from my thoughts. Emma's voice echoed through the hallway, light and happy. Daniel's laugh followed a moment later. I closed my hand around the necklace. And in that moment, I knew the decision I was about to make would stay with me for the rest of my life. Emma walked into the kitchen first, still carrying that glow from the honeymoon. She set her purse down and came straight over to hug me. "Dad, I missed you," she said, her voice warm and full of love. I hugged her back, holding her a little longer than usual. Daniel followed behind, wheeling in their luggage. He gave me a polite smile, but his eyes didn't meet mine for long. I could feel the tension in my own shoulders. The necklace in my pocket felt heavy, almost burning through the fabric. "Sit down," I said quietly. They both sat at the kitchen table, Emma still chattering about their trip, Daniel mostly nodding along. I poured them each a glass of water, buying myself a moment to decide how to begin. Emma reached across and held my hand. "Dad, it was amazing. We saw sunsets I can't even describe, but I kept thinking how much Mom would have loved it. I wore the little bracelet she gave me every day." Her words made my throat tighten. Daniel glanced at me quickly, almost as if he was checking my reaction. I slipped my hand into my pocket and curled my fingers around the necklace. The truth was pressing against my chest, but I wasn't ready to rip her joy apart. Instead, I smiled faintly and asked them about their favorite moments. Daniel spoke about a boat ride, Emma about a market filled with handmade crafts. Her laughter was genuine, and for a moment, I let myself just listen. But every time my eyes drifted to Daniel, I saw the unease in him. Later that evening, after Emma had gone upstairs to unpack, Daniel lingered in the kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. He cleared his throat. "About the necklace," he began. I didn't let him finish. "I got it back," I said simply. His face went pale. I took it from my pocket and placed it gently on the table. The sapphire caught the warm kitchen light, glinting as if it knew it had found its way home. Daniel stared at it, his jaw tightening. "You don't have to tell her," he said quickly. "It'll only hurt her." I leaned forward, keeping my voice low. "What hurts her more, Daniel? Knowing the truth, or living a lie?" He had no answer. His gaze dropped to the floor. "You've made a big mistake," I continued. "One that won't just disappear because you pretend it never happened." He rubbed his temples, muttering something about bad timing, about how he thought he could replace it before anyone noticed. I didn't respond. The weight of silence between us was louder than any argument could be. Emma's footsteps approached, and I quickly slid the necklace back into my pocket. She entered, holding a small photo album she had bought on the trip. She sat beside Daniel, flipping it open, showing me pictures of beaches, street vendors, and candlelit dinners. Her happiness was real, and yet I couldn't stop thinking how fragile it could be. That night, I barely slept. I could hear faint laughter from their room, muffled by the walls. Part of me wanted to march in there, place the necklace in Emma's hands, and tell her everything. Another part wanted to protect her, to give Daniel one chance to make things right. In the early hours of the morning, I sat in my study, the necklace lying on the desk in front of me. I thought about Laura. If she were here, what would she tell me to do? She believed in forgiveness, but she also believed in honesty. My fingers traced the pendant as the first light of dawn crept through the curtains. When I heard movement upstairs, I put the necklace back in the drawer. The day passed slowly. Emma busied herself with laundry and sorting through gifts they had brought home. Daniel made a point of staying out of my way. In the evening, we all sat down for dinner. Emma cooked Laura's old recipe for roast chicken. The smell filled the house with a sense of comfort I hadn't felt in a long time. But even as we ate, the tension between Daniel and me lingered like an unspoken shadow. After dinner, Emma went to the living room to call one of her friends. Daniel stayed behind, helping me clear the table. "I'm going to fix this," he said quietly. I looked at him, searching for sincerity. "How?" He hesitated. "I'll earn back your trust. Just, please, don't tell her yet." His voice trembled in a way that made me think he wasn't entirely sure of himself. I didn't reply. The choice still felt impossible. Days turned into weeks. I kept the necklace hidden, watching Daniel closely. He seemed to be trying, coming home early, helping Emma with small things, being careful with his words around me. But I knew effort didn't erase betrayal. One Sunday morning, Emma came to me holding a jewelry catalog. "Dad, I've been thinking, maybe I could find something similar to Mom's necklace. It wouldn't be the same, but," her voice trailed off. I could feel Daniel's eyes on me from across the room. I forced a smile. "That's a nice idea," I said, my stomach twisting. She didn't deserve to settle for similar. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, turning the necklace over in my hands again. It was time to decide. But before I could act, something unexpected happened. Daniel came to me, holding a folded piece of paper. He handed it over without a word. It was a receipt, proof that he had repurchased the necklace. I frowned. "I already bought it back," I said. He looked genuinely surprised. "I didn't know. I went to the shop yesterday, and they said it was already gone. I thought someone else had beaten me to it." His voice was quiet, almost humbled. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes that felt closer to remorse than fear. We stood there in silence, the unspoken truth between us thicker than any words could describe. Emma walked in then, her smile breaking the moment. She held up a tray of cookies she had baked and insisted we both try one. Daniel and I sat at the table, chewing in silence, both knowing this wasn't over. The necklace was still in my possession. The truth was still between us. And the decision still hung in the air, waiting for the day it would no longer be avoidable. The next morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you notice every little sound, the tick of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft shuffle of Emma's slippers as she moved around upstairs. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, the steam curling in front of my face. The necklace was back in its drawer, tucked beneath an envelope of old photographs. But even hidden away, it felt present, as if it had taken up residence in my thoughts. Daniel came downstairs, his hair still damp from a shower. He offered a casual "morning," but there was a hesitation to it, like he was checking my mood before committing to conversation. Emma followed shortly after, her hair pulled into a loose bun, wearing one of Laura's old sweaters. I smiled at the sight of her, it was almost like seeing a glimpse of the past. We ate breakfast together, though the conversation stayed light. Emma talked about work, Daniel mentioned a new client. I barely spoke, but my silence wasn't from anger. It was from the weight of knowing something that neither of them knew I was holding on to. Later in the afternoon, Emma asked me if I'd like to go with her to the antique market in town. It was something we used to do with Laura every few months, browsing through old books, vintage furniture, and pieces of history. Daniel declined, saying he had errands to run. So it was just the two of us. The crisp autumn air greeted us as we stepped outside, the streets lined with orange and yellow leaves. Emma slipped her arm through mine, and for a while, it felt like the old days. At the market, she lingered at the jewelry stalls, picking up necklaces, bracelets, and rings, running her fingers over them like she was feeling for some kind of connection. I watched her closely, wondering if she was thinking about the necklace she believed was lost. She picked up a small locket and smiled. "This one's sweet," she said, opening it to reveal two tiny oval spaces for photos. Her smile faltered just slightly before she set it back down. On the drive home, she turned to me. "Dad, I've been meaning to ask, do you think Mom would be upset that I didn't have her necklace at the wedding?" The question caught me off guard. I kept my eyes on the road. "No," I said softly. "She'd just be happy you were happy." Emma nodded, looking out the window, but I could see her chewing on the thought. When we got home, Daniel was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters. He greeted us like nothing was wrong, but I noticed his eyes flick briefly to me before settling back on Emma. The rest of the evening passed without incident. But that night, after Emma had gone to bed, I found Daniel in the backyard, leaning against the fence with a cigarette in hand. I didn't even know he smoked. He looked startled when he saw me. "I only smoke when I'm stressed," he muttered, crushing it out quickly. I stood beside him for a moment, the cool night air wrapping around us. "You're carrying this like a stone in your pocket," I said quietly. He didn't deny it. "I know I messed up," he said after a pause. "I've been trying to find a way to make it right, but every time I think about telling her, I freeze." "Freezing isn't going to undo it," I replied. He ran a hand through his hair. "Would it change anything if I told her myself?" I looked at him for a long moment. "It might," I said finally. "But you'd better mean every word." We left it at that. The next day, Daniel was unusually quiet around Emma, and I could tell something was on his mind. At one point, I saw him standing outside the study, looking at the closed drawer where the necklace was hidden. He didn't open it. Instead, he walked away. That evening, Emma invited me to have dinner with them at their place. It was a small apartment, cozy but modest. Laura's photo sat on a bookshelf in the living room. Emma had framed it years ago. The three of us sat down to eat. The conversation was pleasant enough, but I could sense the tension under the surface. Halfway through the meal, Daniel set his fork down. Emma, there's something I need to tell you, he began. I froze, my hand halfway to my glass. Emma looked at him curiously. Daniel glanced at me, then back at her. But before he could speak, Emma's phone rang. It was a friend from work, and she excused herself to take the call in the other room. Daniel sat back in his chair, exhaling heavily. I can't do it, he whispered. You can, I said firmly. When Emma returned, the moment had passed. She resumed eating, unaware of the storm brewing in the silence between us. After dinner, as I was putting on my coat, Emma hugged me. You're quiet tonight, Dad, she said. Just thinking, I replied. On the drive home, my mind was a whirl of thoughts. Was it my place to push Daniel into telling her? Or was it my responsibility to tell her myself? The necklace was safe now, but the truth was still missing from her life. Days went by, and Daniel still hadn't told her. I started to notice small things, how he avoided certain topics, how he seemed extra attentive when she talked about family memories, how he hesitated whenever she mentioned her mother. One Saturday morning, Emma invited me over for coffee. When I arrived, she was alone. Daniel had gone out early for a meeting. We sat in the living room, sipping coffee, talking about nothing in particular. Then, out of nowhere, she said, Dad, have you ever kept something from someone because you thought it would protect them? My heart gave a jolt. I set my mug down. Yes, I said slowly. But the thing about that is, sometimes you're just protecting yourself from having to see their reaction. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded, as if my answer had confirmed something she'd already been thinking. Before I could ask her more, Daniel walked in, carrying a bag of groceries. The moment slipped away. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. I thought about how many times I'd almost told her, how close Daniel had come, how much longer we could keep circling this truth before it finally broke open. And I knew, it wasn't a matter of if. It was a matter of when. It was raining the next afternoon, the kind of steady drizzle that blurred the world outside the windows. I sat in my study, the necklace lying in front of me on the desk, its sapphire catching little flashes of gray light. I'd been turning it over and over in my hands, as if the feel of it could help me decide what to do. The sound of the rain reminded me of a night years ago, Laura and I sitting on the porch, the necklace around her neck, her head resting on my shoulder. She had told me then, in that quiet way she had, that it wasn't the necklace she wanted Emma to have, but the story behind it. It wasn't just a gift, it was a reminder of love, trust, and the promises we keep. And now here I was, holding that same necklace, with a choice I couldn't avoid any longer. When Emma called to invite me for dinner that evening, I didn't hesitate. I knew what I had to do. I slipped the necklace into my pocket and drove through the rain, my wipers moving in a slow, steady rhythm. Her apartment smelled of rosemary and fresh bread when she opened the door. She greeted me with a hug, pulling me inside where Daniel was setting the table. He looked up, his eyes finding mine for just a second before darting away. We ate together, the three of us, the conversation easy at first. Emma talked about a project at work, Daniel asked me about the old house. But underneath it, I could feel the tension, thin as glass. After dinner, as Emma began clearing plates, I reached into my pocket and placed the necklace gently on the table. The light from the kitchen pendant reflected off the sapphire. Emma froze. Her eyes went wide, her hands still holding a stack of plates. Dad, where? Her voice trailed off, caught between shock and confusion. I didn't rush my words. This is your mother's necklace, I said quietly. I found it. She stepped closer, her fingers hovering just above it, as if afraid to touch it. Daniel had gone still, his chair pushed slightly back from the table. I thought it was lost, she whispered. I looked at Daniel, giving him the chance, the only chance, to speak. His throat worked, but no words came. So I spoke instead. It wasn't lost, Emma. It was sold. Without my knowledge. Without yours. Her gaze shifted from me to Daniel, searching his face for denial, for an explanation, for anything that could make sense. But he stayed silent. The air in the room seemed to change, heavier somehow. Emma's fingers finally closed around the necklace, and I could see the way she held it, like she was holding on to something far bigger than the chain itself. Why? She asked him, her voice barely audible. Daniel swallowed hard. I made a mistake. I thought I could replace it before anyone knew. I thought it would help us, help the business. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry, not yet. Help us, she repeated, her tone sharper now. By taking something that wasn't yours? Something from my mother? Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled it back. The silence after that stretched long and uncomfortable. I didn't want to make the decision for her. This was her marriage, her life. But I also knew that trust, once broken, doesn't simply rebuild itself overnight. Emma finally looked at me. Thank you for bringing it back, she said softly. Her voice had a steadiness to it that reminded me of Laura. I nodded. Daniel pushed his chair back and stood, mumbling something about needing air before stepping out onto the balcony. Emma stayed at the table, turning the pendant over in her palm. We sat there for a long time without speaking. The rain outside had slowed to a soft patter, tapping gently against the glass. When she finally spoke, her words were quiet but certain. "I don't know what this means for us yet," she said. "But I do know this necklace will never leave my hands again." I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. "Your mother would be proud," I said. Not because she had the necklace again, but because she was facing the truth head-on. Daniel came back inside eventually, his expression unreadable. He didn't say much, and neither did we. I left not long after, giving them space. When I got home, I sat in the quiet, thinking about how love can survive many things, but only if it's rooted in honesty. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. Somewhere in the distance, I imagined Laura's voice, calm, steady, reminding me that we can't choose the lessons life gives us, only how we carry them forward. And I hoped Emma would carry this one with strength.